Hello?
Hello, is that Ron?
Yeah, is this Matt?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing all right. And yourself?
Good, man. It's so good to talk to you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Same here. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love, I know Girlfriend's 30th anniversary isn't until the fall, but, I'm really happy to dive into it. I've been watching, Space Commander Cobra the last couple of days.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a pilot to it that has, God, I forget the voice actor's name. He was the voice of Lance from Voltron too.
Huh.
And,
I'm not sure. You may know better than I.
I'm not, my anime knowledge is very minimal, sir. It's, I grew up I grew up watching the stuff on Saturday, after school. So it was like Battle of the Planets, Voltron. I remember, I don't know if you remember this. Remember there was like an anime version of Jack and the Beanstalk that was out in the 70s?
Wow. I don't know. It sounds vaguely familiar.
Do you remember? And it was really cool and it was really psychedelic. And then the giant had I remember one time he had he had like boxers on with hearts on it and stuff. And it was very weird. And it was
crazy. Well, that does sound sort of familiar to me. Do you know when in the 70s it would have been?
I would say mid to late. I don't know. I was so young. When we, the benefits of having, I grew up on in East Meadow on Long Island, and I feel like our area was a test market for HBO because we had it so early. I mean, we had it when it first came out. And I remember they would show a lot of that stuff. I remember they would show Watership Down and The Water Babies and Dot and the Kangaroo. And all these movies, right? So
sure.
I'm sure they I didn't learn about this until who was it? Sean Lennon. When I interviewed him, he told me about Le Planète Sauvage, which is another weird. It's weird, but it was all this weird, trippy animation, and I didn't realize how much of it had come out of Japan. To be honest with you, because I was still kind of, I'm young. I was born. I'm gonna be 48 this year, so, So
you hit a little bit the younger spot. I mean, I was 10 in 1974, so.
Oh yeah.
I would have seen. I probably wouldn't have been a lot more years of seeing stuff on TV, because once I was more of a teenager, I just didn't watch as much TV.
Yeah,
but I definitely saw some of that stuff, and the Jack and the Beanstalk really sounds familiar to me.
It does. It's so cool. You have to watch it. It's so trippy.
Yeah, well, for sure.
I remember being a little kid. I remember watching it. I had one of my first memories just watching it. We ordered Chinese food from this one spot we used to get, and I remember watching it, eating Chinese food, eating like spare ribs.
That's a great memory. Right?
And it was so cool. And it was such a classic house we had, man. We had like the big Sylvania, the wooden TV, and we had the funky furniture, it was awesome. My grandmother kept
that's really great.
Yeah, my grandma kept a meticulous house, man. I grew up with Italian American family, so, she kept a lot of cool knickknacks, they were, it was cute, Hummels, all that stuff.
That's great.
You know what I mean?
Well, our house was my mom was kind of into sort of early American, so it wasn't very groovy. I did groovy on my own much later.
Yeah, definitely. But if you were 10 in 1974, I mean, it's so funny watching I have an 8-year-old son, and we've been watching a lot of the old cartoons. It's a joy that Tubi and Plex and all these kind of free streaming services like Pluto.
Yeah, I have Tubi too.
Yeah, what were we watching? We were watching the Pebbles and Bam Bam show. And
that's what came sort of after.
Yeah.
The original Flintstones. But, I remember Flintstones really well.
Oh yeah, but Matt, I mean, the songwriting.
And then it got kind of weirder.
Yeah.
With the little alien guy.
Oh yeah, that alien guy, that bleep bleep guy, that white weird cotton ball or whatever it was. Oh wait, was that something else?
That's sort of the tail end of my.
Yeah.
I guess being that age.
Yeah, well, that's always the thing. They always introduce some weird entity, it's like the Cousin Oliver kind of theory, right? you know. And but the thing I realized though about it is, you know, there's some fantastic pop songwriting on those shows though. Hanna-Barbera really seemed to have some sort of I don't know who they had like writing those songs and doing those songs, but for Josie, for Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
I mean,
I watched Scooby Doo because I was really into like ghosts and horror.
Yeah.
Much later, I actually got to do a theme song for a version of it called Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated.
Oh wow! Did you?
Yeah, I think partly because there was this album of TV theme songs.
Oh yeah, the Saturday
90s.
morning. Yep.
Yeah, a sort of friend of mine made that album, and I picked Scooby Doo because it was kind of the only one of the only ones I knew, you know.
Yeah, totally.
I just remembered it pretty well, you know.
Oh
and
yeah.
So I guess because of that, someone thought of me, you know, and this is many years later.
Yeah.
To do a theme song for a new version of it, and it was really cool because they sent me a bunch of the artwork and stuff to see, you know, ahead of time, and so it was pretty cool. I was gonna say when I first moved to Los Angeles, the Hanna-Barbera building was still there.
Oh wow.
On sort of Cahuenga Boulevard going into the valley from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I was just so amazed, like, there's Hanna-Barbera, but it was already, if not already defunct, kind of on its way to being so.
Oh man, what did it have? Did it have like the classic, like their logo on the building?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
and it wasn't not a super huge building, but certainly big enough to have a bunch of animators in it, and it's just kind of one of those cool things about LA to see, you know, the places where so much entertainment of our childhood was made.
Oh yeah, totally, man. But did you ever, were you ever curious? Did you ever look deeper into like who wrote those songs and like, you know, like the song, you know, because it really weird. I can only imagine that might have been part of your listening, you know, what made you become a pop songwriter too in some ways, just maybe subconsciously,
you
right?
know, I think it was probably in more of a subliminal
Yeah.
way. I don't remember really ever learning about it. I mean, it was on my radar, just like you said, Josie and the Pussycats is a good example of a show I saw, you know, when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I wasn't thinking about, you know, rock and roll and playing an instrument and doing those things yet. You know,
Yeah.
I had other things I got into. I got into, you know, sort of monsters and monster movies, and then, you know, I was really into sort of biology for a while, and I was a biologist, and I was really into space. You know, I called the Jet Propulsion Laboratory when the first rovers landed in,
That's awesome.
I can't remember the year, 74, 76, something like that.
Yeah.
And they sent me a big black and white panorama of the surface of Mars.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of a hobby. And then it really wasn't until I was playing, you know, I played recorder in 4th grade, and then in 5th grade, I played the violin for a while. And
nice.
I think because of violin, I ended up in a music store, you know, getting some rosin or something for my bow.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I wandered into the guitar department, and I saw, like, electric guitars and bass, and they just looked so cool to me. They looked like really futuristic and weird, kind of.
Yeah, right?
And that's what made me want one. It's just they looked cool.
Oh, yeah,
and,
man.
then, you know, I asked the band guy at my grade school, you know, which one should I get, the one with 4 strings or the one with 6 strings? Like, I didn't even know the difference, you know, between a bass and a guitar. And he said, well, you know, we need bass players more. And so I got the one with 4 strings, and that's what really started me in music. And then by the time I was sort of 6th grade, I started buying records that kids a couple of years older than me were listening to. My sister was 2 years older, so her friends were kind of into current, album-oriented rock radio.
Yeah, totally.
And I got, the Roundabout was on the radio all the time by Yes. And so that was kind of the first thing I learned from that album to play. And I started, learning all the Yes songs, which,
wow.
was complex stuff to learn and really good teaching.
Yeah.
But it also, the bass is really loud and kind of a lead instrument on those records, so I could really hear what it was doing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I did have an ear for music. I could hear pitch and stuff really well. So after that, I was just deeply into playing bass for several years, and ultimately ended up in a kind of a new wave punk cover band with kids that were much older than me. By the time I was about 13, I think I was a bass player with kids that were sort of in early college.
And you were in the Midwest, right? You're from Omaha, right?
I'm actually from Lincoln.
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Now.
Yeah.
Lincoln's about 50 miles away, and that's where University of Nebraska Lincoln is, and the football team. And then there is University of Nebraska up here, in Omaha, as well as a college called Creighton.
Wow.
But I really knew Lincoln. I didn't know Omaha too much until I was, a little older teenager. And then we would come up here and play gigs sometimes. And, we'd travel around a little bit, play proms occasionally. And, it was great because I'd make a couple $100 or whatever.
Totally. Oh, yeah, man.
My mother was horrified seeing me do this stuff at, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Well, that's always...
And go on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I can only imagine what youth culture was like in, out there in Lincoln and, back then. Because
it was, it was a fairly liberal place because of the college, and there was kind of still a strong aftermath of kind of hippie granola culture a little bit, and we had a really good record store called Dirt Cheap, and across the hall from it was like a head shop that they had.
Nice.
And so it was, it had there was some kind of hipness going on, and it was the classic record store scene where there were the guys who were like experts that worked there.
Totally.
They would kind of turn you on to things. And so, that was...
I got to look it up.
A big part of our lives, It's just something younger people from now, and not you so much, but they'll never know what it was like to not be able to find out everything about everything at the touch of a button.
I know.
It was like you just couldn't know about that much. You couldn't find out that much. So it was a lot more mysterious, and, it was a big part of our lives, getting albums and, going in your bedroom and playing records that your parents didn't understand, sort of,
Yeah, totally, man. Oh.
And so that was more of my teenage scene. And honestly, I thought I was ready to move out at about, 16 or something.
Yeah.
And, I kind of fought a lot, more with my mother because she was the most worried about what I was doing. Somehow I'd be corrupted. And it sort of was corrupted, but not that they ever knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, man. No, it's funny, too, because I don't know, man. I don't know if I could let, by the time my, son turns 15, 16, man, I don't, it's like a roll of the dice, isn't it, man?
Yes, so, yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Kind of who your friends were. And in my teenage years, as I was older in the teenage years, I generally hung out with people a little bit older than myself.
Me too.
Maybe right in the end, sort of high school, I started knowing or hanging out more with people kind of my own age.
Yeah, that's what me too. Same thing, man.
Yeah, but then, once I was out of high school, I moved down to Athens, Georgia, and went to college there, and I'd met the guys in REM and some other bands from down there. So
I know.
On my way to figuring out how to make independent records.
Oh, totally.
And I didn't think of myself like I would be a solo artist.
Yeah.
But I had started making multi-track recordings. I ultimately got a job when I was in high school at the same music store where I first saw those cool-looking electric guitars.
Oh, very cool, man.
And, one of the things that got invented during this time when I was there were the first multi-track cassette recorders.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like we knew they were coming, and they hadn't come out yet.
Yep.
There was one by Tascam. One by a company called Fostex.
Yep, 4 and 8 track, right? Was it 4 and 8 track and 16, or was it? What did they sell in the stores?
Just 4 track in the beginning. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? That's so crazy. Yeah, and that was just like that cracked open the whole sky to musicians.
Well,
right?
It did it helped me get into, the first thing I did when I had one was I sort of played some instrument, bass or guitar. I didn't really know how to play guitar yet very much. And then, I sang something on it. I think it was just sort of like a note,
Yeah.
And then I did a different note. And it was like to hear a harmony with myself coming back off the machine. There's just something that was really cool about it.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
That's really how I started. And I think that I was never a person who wanted to be the scene and up on stage and needed that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was more like I wanted to hide, and I felt very unsure about myself, and that's why maybe in my teenage years to be just the bass player and kind of have other people taking the spotlight more.
Yeah, totally.
It fit me a little better, and all those early 4 tracks I made.
Yeah.
I would only play them for people on my Sony Walkman. I would put the headphones on them and have them listen to it.
Totally.
And I couldn't, be in a room with hearing myself with people really until I was well into making records. I would still, run out of the room with stuff.
Yeah, right. Hey, let me ask you this, man. No, I know when you went to Athens, because I got that another cool thing that came out earlier this year was that the OOK reissue.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And it's great. And you play bass for them, right? For Linda.
I actually played guitar in OOK.
Yeah. You played
guitar. They were originally a band that had no guitar player. They were just bass and drums and singing.
Oh,
and Linda Stipe was the bass player.
Yeah.
So they were kind of going to break up, and Linda Hopper almost became the singer in The Buzz of Delight, which was a thing I did with a guy named David Pierce as a drummer. And,
I like Linda Hopper. She's great.
You got to not break up OOK. And so I offered to, I'll play some guitar. And, it was just real minimal, just a few notes.
Young Marble Giant style.
It was a lot like Athens vibe, this sort of slightly angular, almost kind of Egyptian vibe. And that probably came originally from the B-52s, I guess.
Yep.
And everybody kind of had it a little bit.
Egyptian reggae, right? Egyptian reggae. Right, but
it was just kind of its own thing. They sort of had their own sound, and there were other groups, and I started buying those albums by Pylon and
Love Tractor, man.
When I was still in high school, so they were all a big deal to me, when I moved there. So it was kind of like being around all these, heroes and getting to be kind of like a fly on the wall a little bit.
That's awesome. So I can only imagine, man, I should probably it's so funny because I listen to Girlfriend so much. I can't tell you how much I listen to this record. It's so funny because, of course, I go to interview. I have 3 copies of this record. I can't find one anywhere. And, it's, I loved, being in high school, I loved REM, and I loved stuff like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. I'm still such a big Satriani fan. And, your album was kind of like the middle ground for me because of the guitar playing on the record and the pop songwriting, and it was just like these best of both worlds for me as a music listener, coming from being a Van Halen fan and stuff like that, and also being
into that more hotshot guitar playing, sure.
Which I love, but little did I know that it was Robert Quine and Richard Lloyd playing on guitar that I wouldn't discover until I was like, after college.
Yeah.
And so that must have been a childhood dream for you, man. Was it like, were you listening to these guys as a kid, like, and now you're playing?
I was. As a teenager, I really liked the Richard Hell and the Voidoids album, the first one.
And Ivan too,
and, I loved Marquee Moon.
Yeah.
So both those guys came from one of those groups. I became really good friends with Fred Marr.
Yeah.
Working on a track on my very first record for Columbia. And when we made my second album, Fred was like, Quine doesn't just play this crazy art rock guitar, but he's also really into jangly kind of arpeggiated stuff. He's a really huge fan of the Byrds.
Yeah.
And so it was really through Fred that I ended up hooking up with Bob, and that was a really interesting thing. And then when my first album came out, very quickly my A&R guy became sort of a lame duck. He was going to go to A&M, but he was stuck in a contract and had to wait a couple years to go there. And so one of the things they did in the meantime, I had done a song for an album by a sort of group project of a drummer, Anton Fear, in New York, called the Golden Palominos.
Yes, I love that, man. Yep.
I did sort of my first tour with them.
Wow.
Playing bass with them on, touring around on a bus. And I think what happened is, like, Columbia maybe gave them some tour support so that they'd take me along and let me sing a couple of my songs off of my first album. And we had a guitar player from a group called the Ray Beats that were, I really liked instrumental
I heard
bands.
that. Yeah, the Ray Beats. I know them.
One reason I liked Love Tractor is they, especially were their early all-instrumental albums.
Yeah, totally.
And the Ray Beats were great. And their guitar player, Jody Harris, came with us on the Golden Palominos tour. Wow. And at the end of that tour, we had 2 more shows booked at the Lone Star Cafe in Manhattan.
Wow, man.
And Anton and Jody had some kind of falling out, and so he had decided to get Richard Lloyd to fill in for these last couple shows.
Oh, wow.
And this was like an impossible task for Richard, like to have to learn all this stuff that we've been doing. And it was literally like, as I remember it, it was one rehearsal. There might have been more,
Yeah.
But so here I was at this rehearsal, and poor Richard's, trying to learn all this shit. And he was sort of nice to me. He said, I like your songs, and he, was more of a pop guy than I sort of would have thought. Like,
definitely.
Stuff was kind of poppy.
Yeah, he's more the pop guy.
And so when I was going to make my second album, I got him to come over to a sublet I was staying in, and I played him some of the songs, and he just sort of played along, sitting at a table with me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is amazing, And so I asked him if he'd play on something, and he was like, sure, So that's how both Bob ended up on my second album, my first album for A&M, because my A&R guy
Earth
actually kept his promise and signed me.
That's awesome.
At A&M, you know.
Well,
and so Girlfriend, you know, it really had the people from Girlfriend on it, but we were still programming the drums.
Yeah.
And then the big change was using real drums, and it was still Richard and Bob for Girlfriend.
But Fred played
and
drums.
Then Girlfriend, which would have been my second album for A&M.
Yeah.
They got purchased by Polygram.
Yep.
My A&R guy was out again before I finished the album. I finished the album, and then we decided, you know, we better try to sell it somewhere because I have no one there, you know, really in my corner.
So you went
and we ended up at this little BMG label that was starting out called Zoo Entertainment.
Yep.
And amazingly, they put it out. And, you know, a lot of my the earliest success with it was on, you know, college radio.
Oh, yeah, man.
And a lot of good stuff happened around the New York area and out on Long Island. So, kind of in your...
Yeah, totally. We had LIR. I'm sure LIR was all over it, man.
Yeah, there was a...
DRE, rather.
Station,
it was
like, kind of in New Jersey that was...
FMU.
A station that I went to many times. I remember it was the first time I had to go to a radio station and play a guitar and sing on the air, and I was just so horrified. Yeah. I'd never done it before, you know.
Yeah. Well.
And of course, I learned to do it eventually because we had to do it just all the time during Girlfriend and.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, I mean, New York's always been Matthew Sweet country around here, man. I mean, as long as I've been listening to you, I always felt like New York's been, you know what I mean?
It's a good area for me because I did get a lot of airplay there.
Yeah.
And do a lot of shows there.
Yeah.
And in general, the East Coast was, you know, better for me. You know, DC was really good.
Oh, Boston I can imagine. Yeah. Oh, really Boston, good. Forget it. Yeah.
And that was kind of my stomping ground. The West Coast, I never had caught on as much. I mean, after I had success, I can still go and tour on the West Coast, but it's just not quite like the East Coast. I also had a lot of success in Chicago.
Oh, yeah, well.
Really, really good radio in Chicago, and it's remained a big place for me as well. So,
oh, yeah, well, they had a great...
all that stuff was really important back then, and
totally,
you know,
man.
changed a lot.
Well, yeah, Chicago had an awesome power pop scene, too, man, with the Lilacs, and didn't Ed Ackerson... Where's Ed Ackerson from?
Yeah.
Because there was a lot. I'm finding so much Paul Kaye, the Weathermen. I mean, geez, there's so much. I mean, it's so much. It's such an amazing... And I love it now because 30 years later, you know, it's so ripe for, like, kind of like Nugget style, like, re-explorations of these kind of scenes.
Yeah, and, you know, Shoes and...
Yeah, Shoes, right?
It kind of come out of there, and the Raspberries.
Yeah,
the... Detroit, but they were... All of them were sort of Midwest power pop things before I knew what power pop was or that it was a genre, you know.
But, you know, the funny thing, you know, before I don't want to get to, you know, Zoo. I mean, I remember Zoo was probably the first indie, somewhat. It wasn't even indie because it was a BMG thing, but I just remember it was like you and Tool and the Odds, that group, the Odds, and the Pooh Sticks, who I fucking love. And
Tool, you know,
and Tool
was really so successful. And I mean, I remember Lou Molly, the president of Zoo, playing Tool for me for the first time. I don't know if he even signed them yet. And he was like, check this out. And it was just overwhelming. I mean, I didn't know
good.
You know, what to make of it. It was very different than myself. But all those guys were around. It was kind of a family, you know, and we all went to parties together, and I knew Maynard, and everybody was kind of friends, you know.
They're great musicians,
Lou was
man.
big on he had a house in Beverly Hills, and it sort of operated as a, you know, party house for Zoo.
Yeah.
So we ended up over there a lot, you know, with all those bands. Bud Scappa, who was partly involved in signing me.
Yeah, Bud.
At Zoo. He got the odds and was really behind them, so they were all around.
Yep, they were great.
Although they were from Canada, so they didn't. I don't know if they ever lived in Los Angeles. Actually, but they were a big part of it.
But the Pooh sticks were fantastic.
And then eventually they did a bunch of stuff with Big Star.
Yeah, the Big Star reissues.
I was a Big Star fan from also as a teenager, pre-Athens,
Oh, yeah,
I
totally.
learned about them through the DBs and Let's Active, these other kind of indie pop bands from North Carolina area. And they were really kind of connected to Athens as well. So, it was like that kind of, I just fell into a little bit of a bunch of things where people knew each other. And, it was,
it's a multiverse.
Really, really special years.
It's a multiverse. It's a genuine multiverse. It's, like REM, like just having been an REM fan since 87, finding out, buying Murmur and seeing Mitch Easter as the production credits, then getting to Let's Active and, discovering Peter Holsapple.
I heard some of Mitch's stuff on a compilation called Shake to Date, and I found it, his stuff really interesting, and, I met REM, before I moved to Athens, which was summer of 1993.
Yeah.
I bought, I sent away, I would get New York Rocker magazine at Dirt Cheap. So, like, for instance, that's how Dirt Cheap was cool. They had, Trouser Press and
that's awesome.
And New York Rocker. And
nice.
In New York Rocker, I found a review of REM's first 45, which is an independent 45 they put out, and Mitch had produced it at the drive-in, and it was the label was called Hibtone, HIB.
Yeah.
Boy. And so I had that 45, and then they came and played at the club in Lincoln called the Drumstick, where I'd been playing with the older bands I played with already. And I went to see them, and kind of nobody was there because nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
And I had them sign my 45, and they're like, wow, a kid in Nebraska has our 45, And so I ended up kind of sitting and talking to them, and a lot of it I was interested to hear about Mitch Easter.
Yeah.
And so they kind of told me all about Mitch and hooked me up with him. They gave me his address. And so in high school, I kind of did some pen pal stuff with Mitch Easter, and he would write me long letters and send me cassettes of his own stuff that was like full 90-minute cassette of like incredible stuff.
Wow, man. Holy cow.
So next time REM came, they had gotten something going with IRS Records, and they were going to put out their first EP, Chronic Town.
Yeah.
And so, I got Chronic Town, and I gave some of my demos to Michael, and he wrote me a postcard being really supportive of my songs.
Nice,
and then I got a postcard from Linda Hopper saying, come down to Athens. I mean, just that's the only way people communicated, was through the mail.
Yeah, right,
just the
totally.
idea of how it would be now is just so less fun, because
I
everybody
know.
would just instantly connect.
Right.
That had a mystery, and everybody said, come to Athens. Mitch said I'd either go to Boston or I'd go to Athens. And since I loved all those Athens bands, that's where, I wanted to go. And then the third time REM came to Lincoln, they were, I think they maybe had just released Murmur, and that was toward the end of high school.
Yeah.
And so I had Murmur, and Let's Active were getting signed at IRS, and they came and were opening up for REM.
Yeah.
And
wow.
so that, for the first time, I really got to meet Mitch in person and see them play, and that was really literally not long before I got out of high school, and I moved down to Athens.
Wow, yeah. Oh, so you were right out of high school when you jumped right into the Athens scene, man. Wow.
The next, weeks later.
Yeah, so you were, what were you, like your early 20s when you made Earth? You must have been like early.
Well, the first album I made was Inside.
Yeah, Inside.
For Columbia.
Yep.
I guess I was about 20 when I think I was 20, spring of 85. I hadn't quite turned 21.
Yeah.
That wasn't until the next fall. So I was 20 and I got this development deal with Columbia.
Yep.
And they flew me to New York and they said, we think you should be a solo artist and use your real name. And I was like, oh, really? It's so embarrassing, And I kind of thought, people would think I made it up, and that made it even more embarrassing. And they're like, no, it's cool that that's your real name.
Like Michael Sweet from Stryper or something.
Yeah, I don't know if he was on the radar yet or not. Probably was getting there.
Yeah.
And that was the one name I ever got confused with was him, And so I had to kind of start from scratch and find out who I was as just myself, I always thought I'd kind of have a band. Even though I thought I'd write songs and do stuff, I would have had a project where it wasn't my name, even if it was me. I would have been more like those bands where it's really one guy sort of, but they have a band name and sound cooler,
Yeah.
But I just
like
kind of
Resnick.
started from scratch and learned in the studio, and they gave me money to live in New York and to quit school and get some, a little more recording gear. I got on an 8-track, and just wrote a lot of songs, and then I made an album that fall.
Inside.
That came out in 1986.
Yep, Inside.
So,
that turns 35 this year too. Wow. Shit.
That was the start. What's that?
That turns 35. Yeah, I forgot. It's so funny. That's I don't have Inside. I can't find it. I'm on the look for it, man. I hope. Are they? Have you talked to like maybe Cheryl at Omnivore? Like I don't know. How hard is it to get Inside and Earth for like a reissue?
I don't know. I don't know if there'd be enough demand that they'd want to do it, but it's possible. Cheryl's the one. I think she's the first person I met from Omnivore years ago when I was working on a Bangles project. They did something for it. I don't know if it came out on Omnivore.
Yeah, the Bangs thing. The Bangs
I met
thing.
some of them at like a party for it.
Yeah.
And then I heard great things about them all through the years. And when I had this album in the can when the pandemic hit, we started looking around for someone to put it out.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to do it with them because they seem to actually care about the record and really respond to the music.
They're the best.
But I really know Brad and the art director. I'm spacing his name right now, but I know it really well.
Yeah.
And they're really the ones that I dealt with there. So I'm kind of yet to meet Cheryl. It's so unusual.
She's cool.
I do think I met her once, but just briefly.
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago.
Yeah. But you would think
it's so strange to be on a label where I've never, traveled to where they are.
Yeah.
Even though we lived in the same city forever, no one's been traveling and playing shows. So otherwise, I probably would have spent a lot of time with her by now.
Yeah, I don't even know if they have offices. They think they do it all remotely, don't they?
I think I know that's one of the first things they did in the pandemic was got out of their offices because, everybody could work from home and it was a way for them to save money.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And, it wasn't really a money deal. It was more just an artistic thing.
Oh, yeah, man.
To where they wanted to put it out and they pay to manufacture it and do all that.
Oh, totally.
And
that's why I was asking.
It was the bright spot for me for the pandemic,
Oh, totally. And that's why I was asking because, they do such great reissues as well.
I know. And, one thing I want to do is some kind of box set of unreleased stuff because I have super lot of stuff.
That'd be awesome.
A lot of demos from those early years that never have been released. And from a lot of albums, I have, some groups of songs from sort of stillborn projects,
Yeah, totally.
And I think I could do a thing like that. I just don't know if cost-wise it would make sense for them or not. So we haven't really gotten to that because we've still been promoting Cat's Paw. It really hasn't.
Yeah, which I love.
Although
that's
I guess 5 months in the record business is a pretty long time.
It's a great record, man. Catherine Yeski Taylor interviewed you for us for the Rock and Roll Globe, which was a great piece, man. That came out pretty awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that cover too with the yawning cat, man. Is that your cat?
It's not. No. It's a stock photo that Omnivore's found. Cat's Paw. Although I heard the word over the last couple of years on something I was watching, and I kind of looked up what it meant, and I figured out a way I could sort of think of it as working for my album. But the other reason it caught my ear is there was a original Star Trek episode called Cat's Paw from 1967, I believe, and in it there's this giant black cat that sort of terrorizes the crew. And, they had this cat, and they built little sets of the hallways for
really?
him to come walking down.
I gotta watch
that. I really
that.
kind of wanted to try to get a still from that episode of that ferocious cat. But it's kind of like my management, the label, nobody wanted to kind of get into trying to get rights for it.
Yeah.
And so we got, the next best thing. They came up with these still photos and, the stock photos.
Yeah.
And kind of created the vibe that I was looking for. Yeah, it's supposed to look kind of ferocious, but it is, I'm sure, yawning, like you said.
Yeah, well, if you're a cat person.
I saw it as yawning, because not that many people do. And many times I've thought it's really just yawning. I have so many photos of my own cats where if you catch them in a yawn, they look kind of ferocious.
Man, I tell you.
That's sort of the go-to.
Yeah, if you know cats.
A ferocious cat is the yawn.
Yeah, if you know cats, man. I love cats too. I'm a cat guy too, man. So they're funny. I wrote a thing, what was it, on Facebook today. I said, I bet you because a friend of mine had a piece of mail come with the cat's name on it. And I'm like, I said, I bet you imagine if half the identity theft cases were actually by our cats stealing our identity. Right?
Well, I've been into cats since I was very young.
Yeah, they're great.
I related to them because they were kind of shy the way I was as a little kid.
Yeah.
And I've got so many photos of me holding different cats we had. They were sort of indoor-outdoor cats at that time. And, I ended up having cats really all my life.
That's awesome.
I've had quite a few. I've known many cats, and
they're the best.
Loved and lost.
I know. They're the best animals, man. They really are the best pets. And you know what is beautiful thing about cats, too, is I appreciate, I'm going to bring it to the record, too, the girlfriend, because, cats, it's an energy thing with cats, too, man. You feel like an energy, you know what I mean? They understand. They recognize energy. I feel dogs do, too, but cats more so, and it's a bond.
Kind of different. Yeah,
it's a bond thing. It's a trust thing.
It's interesting to kind of try to merge your vibe with cats, and the other thing I kind of loved about cats is that they were supposed familiars of witches, and kind of hit that angle of stuff I was into, kind of ghosts and witches and those kind of movies,
Yeah, but it's funny because with Girlfriend, I listened. You gotta think about it, man. I was 17 years old. I was girl crazy. I had probably like a million crushes, and I was very much, but I was always respectful, and I appreciate that now. It's so funny, in this age of Me Too and all this stuff. Nothing feels better than to say, how I was a gentleman with a lot of I love being in the company of women, and it's so funny because I feel like Prince was the same way too in a way, because I just like being around women. Like my wife thinks I'm crazy because I'd rather hang out with the moms than the dads.
Yeah,
I just feel like
I'm the same way.
Yeah, but
I just kind of relate to them a little better.
Yeah, no, totally, and
I always gravitate toward that. And I was girl crazy, so
yeah,
Girlfriend was, naturally, part of my interest.
Oh, of course.
As that age person, I had a little different situation in that I got married very young.
Yeah.
That's how girl crazy I was. I got married when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
And so I was actually married for 6 years before I made Girlfriend.
Oh,
and, or at least before we split up.
Yeah.
And it was a heart-wrenching situation because I was like you, thought of myself as a gentleman who really tried. I wasn't like, I was very engaged with girls, not, I was never sort of dismissive of it. So I really kind of regarded it like a personal failure when my marriage failed. And however, then I fell in love with somebody new.
Yeah.
And all of that got encapsulated in Girlfriend.
Well, that's totally.
Stuff about breaking up, stuff about getting together.
Yeah.
Basic kind of,
Yeah.
pickup song. I mean, Girlfriend's really kind of a pickup line, and Evangeline's really kind of a pickup line,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Some more metaphysical things, like divine intervention or something. But I've been waiting is
totally.
With you,
Dude,
So there were a lot of things, and then there was also the sadness, and even it was really me who said it's over, and it was really traumatic for my ex-wife at the time. She really, really lost it over it. And so there are songs where it sounds like it's me, but they really came from her feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Like, You Don't Love Me,
Yeah.
I was really projecting more.
Yes.
I wasn't thinking as much about I wasn't loved, but just the concept of coming to terms with love ending.
Totally, man. And that's and little did you know, this album was really speaking so loudly to all these poor boys like me that have been friend zoned. And that's what it is. And I feel like that's what really the friend zone. And
yeah, I mean, the reason I think it still has lasting kind of power is that people, used it almost like a tool in their lives to sort of apply in different ways to their own situation. And because of that, they really got attached to it sort of emotionally, And that's, been the luckiest thing in my life because it's kept people caring. It's kept me being able to go and tour and to make records and have a few people want to hear them, And so, it's not something I could ever really recreate or that I ever really tried to, but it's its own thing. And for me, I never got sick of it. I never felt unattached to it. It still really feels like me, and it's natural for me to perform those songs. I never, felt like, oh God, if I have to play these songs one more time, I never had any bad feelings toward it. It really was such a, even though it was a difficult time for me to transition into being a touring artist and being successful, and just the sheer amount of work and people coming at me, the touring, that was, a struggle for me, but it also was a life-changing success.
Yeah, totally.
And,
absolutely.
I've never, forgotten that.
No, definitely, man. Oh, absolutely. What as a little aside too, it's so funny. The girl that was always on my mind when I would listen to Girlfriend wound up becoming like this full-throated like Trump supporter. So I guess I dodged a bullet.
Oh no! Yeah.
Actually, I want to write a song about that. Imagine the girl that you fell in love with, your old high school sweetheart, becomes like a QAnon follower. That's a song right there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my
God.
Yeah,
I was friends with because I did a song for the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
Yeah, with Christy Swanson,
I got to know a little bit from we did a photo shoot, and I just kind of knew her a little bit.
Yeah.
And
she's a Trumpy.
Christy Swanson, who was the star of that movie,
yes.
Long before the Buffy TV show or any of that.
Yeah.
And she became a hideous Trump person. She's like in this thing where it's like a play where they mock, Peter, what's his name, Struck or something.
And
this other girl who, they got in trouble for having texts about how they didn't like Trump,
Yeah, I remember.
They nasty Trump supporters made a play mocking their relationship or something.
That's crazy.
Like their texts. And she was in it, so it was like, oh my God, she became such a horrible person.
Isn't that crazy? But dude, but the good news is, our Winona is still as cool as ever, right? Our Winona.
She is cool, yeah. And it's been fun to see her have a place on, Stranger Things. And, the song really wasn't about her, but I did get to meet her when I was touring with Soul Asylum.
Yeah.
Their singer, Dave Kerner, was dating her.
Yep.
And she came out to some of the shows, and so I met her. I actually taught her how to play the song on acoustic guitar, and she came out and sang with us at one concert. And my wife actually just came up with a photo that I didn't even remember ever getting taken. I have no idea who took it, but I have this photo of me and her, and she's kissing my cheek. So it's like I have this great Winona photo.
Oh man, I love that was Winona Forever was right. Johnny Depp was right the first time, man, with that tattoo. Because honestly,
I really liked that movie Heathers.
Oh, it was great.
And I used to kind of pin stuff up around my desk, just things that I liked, bands or whatever out of magazines and stuff.
Yeah.
And I had this, there was an article about Heathers in, People magazine or something.
Yeah.
And I had pinned this picture of her, somewhere on my wall of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I really wrote the song. It wasn't called Winona.
Yeah.
But it had the line about the movie star.
Yeah,
really totally. More like the guy's having a fantasy that some idea of an ideal girl, he thinks might come and save him or something, or you could be that for me.
Yeah, totally.
And so my friend Lloyd Cole, British guy from a band called Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, you may remember Perfect Skin, which was kind of the big hit of his band.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about him in a minute too. Yeah,
he came to New York to live and worked with Fred Marr.
Yeah,
and we became friends, and he was around during Girlfriend and played on it.
Yeah, you guys shared a lot of the band. You guys shared a lot of the lineup.
He was one of the people who sort of encouraged me, about the songs on it. He really dug, the demos of Girlfriend and some of the other songs, and it was really a great encouragement, and I, really respected him a lot. He knew a lot. He had a career, and I was just kind of starting out, and so that's song was called, I think, Alone in the World or something like that. But it had a little bit of a country vibe. It had this Neil Young beat to it.
Yep.
It was kind of like the album Harvest.
Yeah, totally.
And Lloyd said to me, it's kind of like a country song. You should call it Winona. And I was like, well, her name's Winona. But it did sort of fit it,
Yeah.
And so I changed the title to Winona, and Lloyd is really responsible for that. And, then ever after, everybody thought it was about her. And then, all the interviews I would do, I'd be like, it's not really about her, but this is the story of it. And so it just kind of became known as that thing. But it was really Lloyd Cole suggesting what he thought was sort of a country title.
And for Winona Judd. For Winona Judd. Which would have been cool, too, honestly.
Well, I don't think he was thinking of Winona Ryder because he had seen the photo I pinned up, you know. So he knew that, I liked her, but it wasn't like a big crush or something, I just thought she was cool,
Yeah, no, because it was great because I love, because I did recently, I went on a big Lloyd Cole kick a few years ago, and then I got around to Don't Get Weird on Me, Babe, and I was like, wow, this is almost like the twin album, The Girlfriend, because of all you guys shared so many people between
we all worked together, and
you played bass?
I ended up playing bass on the at least his first solo album, maybe some after that. And we did another album in more recent years where he was out in L.A. at J.J. Abrams' studio, and Fred and I went and played on it. And it was, he's great. I wish that I got to spend more time with him than I do, just because of where he lives. Yeah. I just don't see him very often. And I really am jealous of it because I love that part of Massachusetts up around Mount Holyoke. And
it's nice up there.
It's just such beautiful country, and he's raised a family there.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's got some great records, man. It's he's fantastic. Rattlesnakes, just 5 Easy Pieces, such a good record. I fall into rabbit holes with stuff, and Fred Marr, I love, because the first time Fred Marr came on my radar, because my first Lou Reed album was New York. I'm a New York guy.
Oh yeah, and Fred made that album. That's totally when I was hanging out.
That's awesome, man.
Fred,
so good.
That was like really at the height of Fred and Lloyd and I being kind of in a group of friends. I didn't really have any that I remember any real. I never really went to any of those sessions. I don't think.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool thing for Fred that he got that producing gig.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, what about the Tuesday Weld photo? I never got the story about, because I love that picture. And where'd you get that from?
Well, I was, I was sort of, I really dug like starlets from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And, again,
Grace
no
Kelly.
internet, you know what I mean? So you couldn't like find pictures of them or learn about them much other than watching old movies.
Yeah, or like Look magazine and stuff.
So I went through a period where I was kind of looking for photos and autographs and stuff of all these different actresses.
Yeah.
And I ended up meeting a guy in New York City named Ken Galente, and he had this massive archive of photographs and autographs, and it was like Life magazine would like call him if they needed a photo of somebody, and
that's awesome.
He would lease these photos to people, or give them rights to publish them. and he was kind of a difficult guy, and I couldn't really get him to sell me any photos or, kind of part with anything.
Yeah.
I remember he had a photo of the Beatles signed by all 4 Beatles.
Wow.
Oh my God, I wish I could have.
Imagine.
He probably would have sold it to me, but it just I wouldn't have had the money.
Yeah, right. It would have broke you.
So Lisa, still my wife. We've been together 28 years. We've been married 28 years.
Oh, okay.
So that's really the girlfriend of girlfriend. We stayed together, and
that's
she
awesome.
and I came up with this idea that I laid on Ken, that she and I would come on, some weekends and spend a few hours over time re-alphabetizing and organizing his photos.
Yeah.
And his files.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it was in doing that, and he would pay us by giving us some things we found.
Nice.
So I found a couple of actresses I was really interested in. Jean Seberg, who came from Iowa in Marshalltown and became, the star. We were mostly known for the movie Breathless, the French New Wave film. And she did some Otto Preminger stuff and some different things. Had really kind of a tragic life, ultimately. And I found some incredible photos of her really young. Must have been in New York, and some photographer was, at her apartment taking all these different really cool photos. And then the other amazing cache of photos that were very similar to those were these Tuesday Weld photos.
Yeah.
And that one particular photo of her really caught my eye, and there's just something about it.
Yeah.
Because she was so young, and I thought, she looks like she thinks she knows everything, And I didn't know really how young she was until later on.
What was she?
She's really young in that photo. I can't remember.
14?
Exactly,
like a teenager,
but I
right?
think she's, 14 or 15 years old in it, And, and so I had my, sights on that photo, and I thought this would make a great album cover.
Definitely.
And the thing was, one of the things about me not wanting to be a solo artist is I really hated the idea of being the guy on the cover with like a guitar or whatever. It just was so kind of boring to me.
Yeah, right.
And so the Tuesday Weld photo was the first time I thought, I'm going to put something on the cover that I like, instead of like me having to see myself, and you'll see on my first 2 albums, I got them to hire sort of fashion photographers that were doing real impressionistic kind of blurry stuff at the time.
Yeah,
there was
like
kind
Earth.
of a movement of it, and so even on those, I'm trying to kind of obscure myself as best I can,
Yeah, definitely.
So on Girlfriend, I said, I want to use this Tuesday Weld photo, and I sent her the album and the lyrics and went through this whole thing, and she's very private, very anti kind of, publicity.
Yeah, definitely.
And so eventually I got the green light. We can use the photo.
Oh, wow.
And we got Ken Galante to give us the rights, to use it.
Yeah.
Because he owned the photos. And so still, though, I was getting pushback from the label, put a picture of yourself, not this other picture.
Oh,
and they really tried to, almost kind of tried to stop me from using it. They wouldn't just put the whole picture on the I just wanted nothing but the photo.
Yeah.
And they just kept making half the cover like a black bar.
No.
And the funny thing is, if you see it now, if you see a long box or a CD from then, there's a little black bar on the right.
Yeah.
And that's like, we kept pushing it smaller and smaller to the right, and I still had to give in to having the little bar on the album. And then the worst thing, or best thing that happened is, and I don't know if this was a last-ditch attempt to get me to not use the photo or what, but somebody in the legal department got a hold of, the album was called Nothing Lasts, after one of the bonus tracks.
Yeah.
And somebody got a hold of her people and said, well, is it okay that it's called Nothing Lasts? And then they were like, that gave them the idea that somehow it's negative about her, which it wasn't. It had nothing to do with, the photo that it was called that. And so then they said, well, no, you can't use it if it's called Nothing Lasts.
Yeah.
And so at the very last minute, I said, fine, I'll call it Girlfriend. Because that's how bad I wanted to use that Tuesday Weld photo.
But it's perfect.
I really had to fight for it,
But,
and you'll see, throughout my career, I'm trying to, have it somehow not be something I'm not into. I guess on 100% Fun.
Yeah, you're in there.
This kid photo where I have my King Kong album.
Yeah, I love that record too, man.
That was, that was okay with me. Like, I sort of picked that photo.
Wow.
But, that's what I love about now. And after that, a million bands had photos or things that weren't themselves. But it just wasn't normal for solo artists. And, one of the arguments I made at the time was, what about the Smiths? They put photos of, like, actors and stuff on the covers,
Yeah.
So I was just trying to make arguments why it was okay.
Yeah, right? No, but, it's funny because that was the draw for me. Just seeing Tuesday Weld looking up at me, too. I bought the tape right there. I bought it at Rhino Records in New Paltz, I remember. And because I had moved upstate for, when I was in 4th grade, I had moved upstate, and that's where I grew up. Actually, I want to tell you, 100% Fun, I had, in 95, I was interning. My first internship was at WDST. And
that's great.
That was back when Nick Harcourt was working there as the music director. So Nick himself handed me my promo copy of 100% Fun. That was like someone handing me my first little bag of smack, dude. It was like an addiction that continues to last. Free CDs and promos. I was like, I can get this stuff for free.
Was a bright spot. That album was a bright spot for me because
so good.
After Altered Beast, although it did really well.
I love Altered Beast too.
Now or whatever.
Yeah, that's an awesome album too, though, man.
It was sort of like 100% Fun was, back to being radio successful and kind of made everybody happy, and it ultimately sold as much as Girlfriend and helped Girlfriend sell a bunch more. Both of those albums eventually became platinum.
Definitely. Oh, definitely, man.
It was kind of after the fact.
And I
really only have gold records for them.
Yeah.
I have to tell you this tiny aside that's great.
Yeah. Please.
My iPad is sitting on my desk, not too far away from me, and it happened to be open to the email because I opened the email about our interview to get your phone number and the details of our call so I could call you.
Yeah.
And I just got an email in, and I get a ton of junk mail, and this really is sort of junk mail, although occasionally I open these.
Yeah.
And it's from a place, whatever it is, called Trivia Genius.
Yeah.
And the question that's the title of the email is, why do witches always have cats?
Oh, jeez, really?
It's sort of uncanny that it came up.
That's funny, man. That's great, man. It's so funny. It's a couple more things I want to talk to you a little bit about Space Commander Cobra, but the one thing I want to ask you, I got to tell you, man, it hasn't. in the last like 5 years, I want to say, and probably not since the 80s, have I been a big fan of like music played on pop radio as I am now. And I wonder if you felt the same way. Are you a fan? Because I think there's some amazing, like Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, I think is putting out amazing stuff. Are you a fan of like kind of what's going on? Like Jack Antonoff, do you like what he does as a producer?
I like those people. The thing with me though is I just don't listen to records much.
Yeah.
You know? I do know about all those people, and I do like them. I'm really impressed with Harry Styles.
He
great. Just seems like a cool person, and I've seen him, interviewed and on various things where I just thought I like that guy, and I didn't really care about his boy band or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Miley.
She's great, man.
I was really into. That album that had Wrecking Ball on it.
Yes, the bangers.
It's My Party or whatever the part, and not only that, but Party in the USA. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
But I don't listen to the radio, and I think the thing that happened to me is doing so much music in my life.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm not doing it, I just don't want to hear music. It's like how I get my mind back to quiet,
No, it's funny,
but I can see what you're saying. There's really good pop stuff, and I imagine
it really is.
Having a young kid helps you also stay in touch with that.
Oh yeah, there's some stuff where it's like it's a strange thing. I also find a lot of like hip hop is really like I love these guys that are MCs, but they sing really well too. Love
the singing.
Like Anderson .Paak and Travis Scott. I love Juice WRLD. I thought Juice WRLD was fit. I'm so sad that Juice WRLD died. And Mac Miller too. I thought Mac Miller was like that was like losing Otis Redding or someone at that age, or someone or Graham Parsons. Like there's a 26 club too, as much as there's a 27 club.
Oh, I love Graham Parsons, and he was really a songwriter that I needed on. I think I first got a tape of the Graham Parsons albums from Peter Buck.
Really?
It somehow originated from Peter Buck when I lived in Athens.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't know much about or care much about country music, Graham's stuff really got to me. And I was, early on a Graham fan. And that's also how pedal steel guitar and One Girlfriend, I met Greg Lease through my friend Jules Shear in New York.
Jules.
And I said, do you know Graham Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers? And he's like, yeah, totally. And so that's how he came to come play on Girlfriend and play some lap steel and a bunch of pedal steel. And that was also the Graham influence,
Yeah, oh, totally, man. It's that's it. Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because it's just so much. Like Graham. Yeah, I love Graham Parsons, man.
We went. We used to go out and stay at the hotel where he died in Joshua
Really?
Tree. We went to the rock where they supposedly burned his body.
Wow.
And it sounds morbid. We stayed in the room where he died, but it was more, appreciation of Graham.
Yeah,
and understanding what he loved about going out there to Joshua Tree and kind of tripping or whatever he did. He took Keith Richards out there. And, that's part of why living in California and in Los Angeles was so great. There was just a lot of history of people that I loved.
Oh, totally, man. It's funny because I'm trying to think of how I discovered my probably introduction to Graham Parsons was probably the Lemonheads cover of Brass Buttons.
Oh, I didn't even know they covered that.
Yeah, on Lovey.
Song.
And
I love that song.
Dando, man. I love Dando, man. He was right up there with you, man. You and Dando were really, because I always loved.
Yeah, we did quite a few shows together at radio concerts, where they did a lot of radio shows where they would, get together a batch of bands and have sort of festivals. And I remember a few with him there. He really was struggling with substance abuse.
I know.
At that time, and I remember.
He's so good.
What contact I had with him then, he was really out of it.
Yeah, but he's so good.
I drank a lot, and I always, smoked pot, but
yeah, always.
He really had a problem with it, which was, unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. I hope I interview him too soon because I love that fucking guy. He is such a great songwriter, and I
think he's in good shape now.
Oh,
but I
yeah.
guess I honestly don't know.
But it's so funny, and there's another. I'm really, I've been listening to, because they put out just so many records in the last 5 years, is I've been reassessing my appreciation of Weezer, and I've been listening to the last 4 or 5 records, and I feel like he's kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to assess my head around Rivers as a songwriter, and he throws me for loops all the time.
They were really great. Everybody loved them.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing I really made me jealous of them is they made those cool videos with Spike Jones.
Yeah.
I also got to know pretty well. Those I really admired their videos. They were really, creative and fun and kind of interesting. They were fun and funny in a way that I kind of wasn't, So
the sweater song was funny.
I don't want to say I envied it, but I really appreciated their thing being having a lot of power to it.
Yeah, totally.
It's funny. I once went to Spain and did a tour where a guy who was a keyboard player in Weezer opened up for me in Spain. His name was Matt Sharp.
Yeah, Matt Sharp is. Oh yeah, he was the he was like the second songwriter. He was the guy that wrote him and they did the kind of the first 2 records together, didn't they? Rivers and Matt.
Yeah, and I just remember our Spanish promoters and road managers. They would say his name, and it just sounded so funny to Matt Sharp.
He's great.
And it's funny because it's kind of goes with my name pretty well.
Yeah, right. Sharp and sweet, man. Right? It's so funny because I'm surprised, did any of the, because DGC was really, they became the hub of that crunchy power pop, kind of, with the Posies and Nirvana and Teenage Fan Club. Did they approach you at all ever, to try to scoop you up at all?
No.
Which I'm surprised.
No, but I had, pretty close contact with Teenage Fan Club.
Yeah.
My friend and longtime drummer Rick Mank.
Yes, Rick.
His group Velvet Crush were on Creation in England, and they turned me on to Teenage Fan Club kind of before they first came to the States. I was at their first show in New York when they first came over, and they were really nice guys. And at the time, I went and played in Scotland a couple times, and always went to see them, hung out with them a couple times. And in fact, their drummer, who they sacked, was a giant fan of Girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
And I was told, I think by Rick, that when they fired him, he sort of locked himself in his hotel room playing Girlfriend over and over and over again.
Oh, my God,
Because
man.
he was so upset, that he got fired from the band. But,
You see,
but I love
therapy,
Teenage
man.
Fan Club.
Yeah.
They were so cool.
They really are. And I've been listening to those
you know,
records again.
Every so often I'll see Norman. I saw him in New York. I sang a couple songs at a Big Star Third concert.
Yeah.
They did a little bit before, I think it was before Chilton actually died.
Yeah, I remember that.
Jody Stevens, the drummer, was a good friend of mine, and I haven't seen him in a long time, but we were very friendly. He used to come out doing work for Ardent, coming out to Los Angeles all the time.
Yeah.
And he came and sat in a couple times with my band at shows. And anyhow, Teenage Fan Club, or rather Norman Blake, was on that show. So I saw him there. It was kind of old home day a little bit. It was at a college in New York City. I forget the name of the college. in a big kind of auditorium. And I saw Michael Stipe there too, and I hadn't seen him forever, you know.
Yeah.
And he came down this long row of empty seats where I was sitting at one of the rehearsals and gave me a big hug, which made me so happy, you know, because we were sort of buddies when I was a kid, and I really looked up to him, you know.
He's
we wrote
so cool.
a couple songs together, and so, you know, it was fun to see him.
Yeah, he's been great, man.
Kind of friends. I see Peter Buck will come to our shows in Portland. A very good friend of mine named Andy McCullough sort of works on Peter's guitars.
Oh, wow.
And I know Andy from back in Lincoln when I was growing up. So there, you know, I see him. Mike Mills, you know, I know pretty well, and we have a pretty good relationship. So I remember I saw him at that show. In fact, he and I both smoked weed at the, you know, kind of when we were rehearsing those shows. Yeah. And there was like a strict, you can't smoke weed, or rather even smoke anything, I think, in that auditorium.
Oh, geez. So where'd you guys go?
And he had smoked before I did, unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
And somebody smelled it, and then he blamed me.
Oh.
He told the people it was me, and like I got in trouble. Like, I mean, you know,
what a rascal!
People came and said you can't smoke in here, and then I learned later on at sort of a party that night that he had told them it was me, just as kind of a joke, you know. So.
What a rascal! He's a rascal.
He's a rascal, exactly. He's totally a rascal.
He's so funny. You know, that's the. You know, let me ask you this, man. You know, it's 19. You know, and I was talking to this because I was telling a friend of mine I was talking to you today, and man, that album, you know, Girlfriend came out. I'll never forget that. But I can't believe I graduated high school in '92, and I was a senior that fall when all these records came out. What was that like? Because you had 10, Nevermind, Blood Sugar, Use Your Illusion.
You know, we loved you know, and I got to hear all those bands before because, like, my A&R guy would give me, you know, the tapes that I guess a lot of them got signed off of.
Yeah.
You know, so I heard Nirvana stuff before they put out their first album. I heard a lot of earlier Soundgarden stuff, you know. I never got to see Nirvana play, which I wish I had.
Me too.
But everybody was amazed with Kurt. I mean, his voice, I just thought was so cool. Like, my voice just so totally can't do sort of what his voice could do, but he really had a great sound and a great energy.
Oh yeah, his work wasn't done.
And a great pop sensibility. He was a fan of REM, you know.
Oh yeah,
his
work wasn't
so
done.
I loved the Nirvana album. It came out right at the same time, and we would hear it, you know, driving to whatever radio station it was getting played at the same time. And I, you know, occasionally covered Nirvana songs, you know, and Soundgarden got big, in my mind anyway, a little later than Nirvana.
Yeah.
But, like, those guys, you know, I got to see them at, like, radio conventions in a little bar.
Wow.
Not that crowded because not that many people knew them yet. And they were just so amazing. I mean, they were really great. And I, you know, envied all those guys who got to be in bands, you know, because when you're a solo artist, you kind of have nobody to share it with, the good or the bad parts of it, you know. And I tried to really bond with the bands that I had, but I always kind of was a little bit envious of all those cool rock bands that came out. Then there was Pearl Jam.
Yeah, well.
You know, I saw them play on Saturday Night Live. The girl named Julia Sweeney, who was on the cast.
Yeah, Julia.
Pat, if you remember
Pat. Yep.
She was a fan of Girlfriend and invited me to go to see Saturday Night Live film. And so I was at that show, and gosh, I can't even remember who the host was, but I remember that Pearl Jam was the musical guest.
I gotta watch that
again. And I went to the
again.
after party, and I remember the bass player came over where I was sitting and said hi. It was really, really nice. And
Yeah, Jeff's good.
Took off after that. They got so big.
They're so good. Oh man, I was listening to No Code the other day, and but you have Rick. You have Rick Menck, who's been with you forever. Like he's like that's like your guy, right? I mean,
he's like my brother, and he also is a font of knowledge about records, about old records, about bands, and he really was my, conscience of learning about more music that I would like. He's the one who helped me, get to know all the history of power pop. He had a band out of Chicago called the Reverbs, and he wrote me a letter about Buzz of Delight when I lived in Athens, and that's how we met. And we wrote a couple letters, and I suppose we talked on the phone, and he ended up coming down to Athens and visiting me, and we just became really good friends. And we, at a point when I was in Lincoln, we got a storage space, and he set up drums, and we first played together. And he was like the first really great drummer that I played with. I was just like, this guy is fucking great. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, man.
So
I follow him on social
more
media.
Than that, he's been kind of like a brother to me. And, we're both kind of really moody people in a way, but we really, really hit it off in music. We like... if he loves something, he knows I'm going to love it, know? And he's turned me on to just so many great things, and he got me much more into great 60s stuff.
Yeah.
And he eventually, also moved to LA. In those early years, I didn't always get to play with him because he and Paul Chastain's group, who's also a dear friend and plays bass in my band, they had Velvet Crush. And they got signed at Epic and put out an album there. So they were like, on their own path, and they, it was awesome. They got to open for like Oasis on their first tour.
Was it Teenage Symphony, right? Isn't the album called Teenage Symphony?
What's the girl with the really slow, hypnotic songs?
Mazzy?
Yeah, Mazzy Star, exactly. Yeah. I think
with the late...
that band was, maybe they toured with some.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, I always thought they kind of they were in a hipper world than me.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I wanted to be more like that kind of thing. I thought of myself really as alternative rock.
Yeah.
And yet my success was initially more on kind of classic rock radio with Girlfriend.
Yeah.
Then as alternative rock radio got really going with Nirvana and all of that,
but
that was where I got my airplay.
But I can imagine
right in the beginning it was more in the rock world. Once I graduated from college radio, I had
definitely.
some kind of number one record on college radio.
Yeah, well, I can imagine also, you also had a hard rock audience too, because I figured, like I said, the other appeal was the guitar playing, and I know you were interviewed by I think there was one feature I read, didn't Guitar for the Practicing Musician do a feature on you back then, and stuff like that, or Guitar World, or one of those magazines. My uncle used to have it.
Yeah.
So I remember reading about you.
And I also, partly due to my, a little bit kind of stage fright and never having really played a lot of shows as a solo artist, I really cranked up the guitar. When I was first touring, we were really a loud rock band. And so people were kind of surprised how much more we rocked out live than Girlfriend seemed even,
That's awesome.
So that did did. I mean, I don't really do that now in the same way. I don't play crazy loud.
Yeah, reverb it up.
But we never lost that kind of vibe, and it was, touring was a new thing, and it was a challenge, but, and I, had a lot of stage fright and stuff back then.
Oh, man.
Now, I don't have that at all.
Good.
And I so enjoy seeing the fans care about the song so much, and
oh yeah,
I really am much better at opening up and kind of experiencing it with them.
Yeah, definitely. I saw you in 1997 on the Blue Sky and Mars tour at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, and that was an awesome show, man.
Yeah, I remember that place. I played there more than once.
Such an awesome. That's one of my favorite places of all time. I've seen so many shows there as a kid, and that was a great show, great. Man. Yeah, I mean it's fun. I hope you get to have you mapped out a kind of a show strategy, a tour strategy for this year?
Not yet, really. We're not exactly sure in what way it's going to come back. How quickly we'll really be able to book 2 or 3 weeks of dates running together. I think it might be more likely that I'll do a few one-offs first.
That'd be cool.
Maybe not even with a whole band. It just depends on how it comes back and what the money is like. How we've toured over the years is we'll find a couple of bigger money dates like festivals or something.
Yeah.
And then we route a whole bunch of other dates kind of around those. And so we'd have to get to that point to be able to do it. I mean, like my longtime agent with offices in Monterey, in Austin, in New York, I mean, they barely have survived the pandemic, It's everything shut down. So,
crazy, dude.
I get the feeling people are starting to play again, but I haven't, we haven't yet started to book anything. We talk about it, and we expect it to kind of start happening later this year.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say exactly how it's going to work, And I mean, I don't want to die either, so.
No, I hear you.
I'm older and I have some health issues. My health is worse after the pandemic, so I kind of need to get in better shape.
Yeah, I hear you, man. No, I hear you.
Stamina to go.
No, I know, man. It's
like I'm kind of afraid when they're going to call and go, we've got some dates, because I'll be like, I can't do it, until I kind of get in better shape.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. No, I totally hear you, but it'll be all right in the end. I think people are ready for people to play. There's 2 more things.
I agree. I think it will happen, and obviously now I've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I've had my second vaccination.
Good.
So I feel like I'm okay for me, but it still is so kind of unsure, and not enough people are getting vaccinations, and it's looking like we're all going to have to get a booster in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, for instance, my wife works at a place that makes lenses for eyeglasses, and it's like a girl there got what seemed like a terrible cold or flu last week, and she has like full-blown dangerous COVID,
Wow.
So it's like still happening, and it's happening more to younger people because they've, been vaccinated less.
Yeah.
Or else, Trump fans, a lot of them kind of resist.
Of course.
Doing it, and so, that scares me a little, that we're going to see a resurgence again because people just aren't fully on board.
Yeah.
I don't even understand that also, because Trump got his 2 vaccinations.
It's a grift, man.
He got him, I'll get him,
He's a shuckster, man. That's all he is. That's all he is. He's a grifter, man. That's it. Just simple as that. It's crazy.
I agree.
What? Oh, 2 things I want to ask you before I let you go. We've been on the phone for a while, and I don't want to keep you. So yeah, I'm thinking of the Nebraska connection. Did you ever get together or meet up or have a hello with Connor Oberst?
Yes, I did.
That's cool.
Meet him. One of my nieces, my brother has 3 daughters.
Yeah.
He's about 5 years older than me, and one of my nieces was married to a guy who worked at the studio with Mike Mogus.
Yeah.
And was kind of in that world. And there's a girl on the label, and I'm spacing her name. And I think she was dating Oberst, or was his girlfriend. And they came out to L.A. and played. And I guess he'd be my nephew-in-law or something, was playing bass with her. I know her name. It's just not coming to the top of my head. And I met Connor then, because he was at that show, and hung out for a few minutes.
What'd you think of them?
Certainly very aware of the label Saddle Creek. I thought they were great because they didn't have to put pictures of themselves on their album covers.
Yeah.
And, that whole scene happened, when I was, had been gone a long time, sort of, when it happened. But I did have a little connection to it because of my niece. And,
totally.
Now it doesn't seem so much. It seems kind of like their era is, it's not like their heyday anymore. But I know he's done a lot of, he plays with other, super groups, and
he does really cool stuff.
And is around,
it's really cool. He's like friends with like Jim Keltner. He's he works with like that guy Blake Mills, the guitarist Blake Mills, and
I don't know if I know Blake Mills, but I've worked with Keltner a few times. He played on an album of mine called In Reverse.
Yeah.
And he also played all the drums on the Thorns album.
Yeah, the Thorns. I remember that. Yep.
And he and I really bonded on that Thorns thing. And in fact, he introduced Pete Droge and I to the Rolling Stones.
Oh, wow.
Came to play a big show in Atlanta while we were making that record.
Wow.
And we went up to Ronnie Wood's room, got to know him pretty well, and we watched that documentary, Standing in the Shadows of Motown, which I guess Charlie Watts had an early copy of before it came out. And so we got to hang around with Ronnie.
So cool.
I met Keith, Blondie Chaplin.
Wow.
They were all like super cool to us.
What year was
the
this?
The only one I didn't meet was Mick, but he was kind of the one I cared the least about, so it was,
right.
It was okay.
What year was this? What tour was this? Was this
Melbourne, that was a big deal. I mean, I never got to meet a Beatle. I did get to work with George's son Danny,
who's great,
a little bit on my stuff with Susanna Hoffs.
Yeah.
He played on something for us, but that's my closest Beatle connection, and that they'd be the next people I wish I'd met. Now, of course, my super idol Brian Wilson, I was lucky enough to get to know a little and be around his band, and we played together on David Letterman when there was a big tribute going on at Radio City Music Hall in New York.
That's so cool,
I
man.
have gotten to meet a few of my idols, but and bands like Parks, incredible guy.
Oh yeah,
played
man.
A bunch of keyboards on an album of mine. And
that's so cool.
We hung out at my house and smoked weed for much of a summer when I was working on an album and starting on the
That's awesome.
thing. And
what about
really kind of like a mentor to me. A really wise, really smart and funny dude.
He really is.
And,
he's great, man.
So I've had a lot of luck getting to do those things, and Keltner, he's one of those classic guys,
Yeah, you know, I love Van Dyke Park because he's really helped me appreciate the artistry of like whimsical music. You know, because I always thought of like
into I want to say calypso and I'm almost thinking there's a genre that I'm not thinking of that is really what it is. But at any rate, he made tapes for me of all the real old, roots of that music that was really incredible, and taught me about some music I didn't know about,
Yeah.
And but I always really dug him, and I liked those crazy records, I had the one that was like the Brer Rabbit album. I'm spacing the name of it, but and of course, his connection to Brian was cool, but but it was awesome because I got to know him outside of that connection, just as him,
Yeah, no, he's very cool, man. It's they just released that Orange Crate Art Omnivore. Oh, that was the one thing I wanted to ask you, man. What did you think, being your Beach Boys guy? What do you think of stuff like MIU and Beach Boys Love You and Holland? Do you like Holland? Are you a Holland guy?
Yes, I really like Holland. I know Love You pretty well, but it's not one of the ones I'm the most
or LA Light.
I definitely had Orange Crate Art.
That's a great record.
I don't know if that album, I kind of think they might not have really been together when they made it. They're like sort of each worked on their parts kind of separately. I don't know why I have that in my head, and I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Dennis. I love Dennis' solo album.
That's a great record.
It's got some great stuff on it.
Yeah.
And
I have I have Youngblood. Who's that? Carl Wilson?
That sounds right. Carl made a couple albums that are pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's some kind of goofy stuff on it, but
yeah,
I got to play with. I actually played with Van Dyke on they used to have these tributes to Carl, but I think were to raise maybe money for cancer research or something.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I got to play on one of those. I met Eric Clapton at that.
Huh.
I got to know the bass player Leland Sklar.
Yeah.
Through Van Dyke was a friend of his.
That's cool.
He was one of my bass idols.
Oh,
when
yeah,
I was learning to play bass, I used to learn his bass lines off of loads of things.
Oh, totally, man, totally. I remember, he came on my radar when he appeared on my radar when for that live, when Phil Collins released that Serious Hits Live, and I saw the live version of Something Happened on the Way to Heaven on MTV, and this big tall guy with the beard. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I didn't realize what a master he was. And now growing up, and
he played on so many classic sort of singer-songwriter records.
Oh yeah.
Also a lot of I believe Jackson Browne.
Yeah,
records.
Jackson. One of my before the pandemic last year, I just started to write for Billboard again, but I was doing a lot for Billboard for a long time, and one of the last things I did was a 40th anniversary story on Mad Love by Linda Ronstadt, and I don't know if you saw, but I got to talk to everybody. I got to talk to Linda, which was awesome. But I got to talk to Peter Asher and Danny Korchmer and Waddy and Russ Kunkel, and it was so cool. And I can only imagine you being a fan of that. Would I imagine, did you ever have any like kind of dream of like working with that band? Kunkel and those guys?
I don't know if I put myself in with those things, but more in awe of them and a fan of them. Leland also, my wife and I used to really, every Sunday morning we would go and walk these humongous swap meet kind of
Like flea markets?
In Southern California around L.A.
Oh,
and,
man.
Leland did that too. Like, he was a big, like, kind of rummage guy.
Yeah, I love that
so
stuff. I love that stuff.
See him when we were walking these flea markets, and that was another way I sort of connected with him. Danny, is it Korchmar?
Korchmar, I think.
Korchmar. When I made In Reverse, the guys who were running the label at the time wanted me to meet with him, and I met with him and almost made an album with him.
Wow.
But I ended up doing it with my friend Greg Leese and the engineer Jim Scott, co-produced, and Fred Marr was involved in it. So we did this kind of team of guys approach to the record. But
that's
I'm
awesome.
sure he would have been great. He's supposed to be
He's cool.
A really talented
He's
guy.
talented. He's a character, man. He's funny, man. And he's from New York, so he's like a ball buster, so I'm used to it.
Yeah.
He's
I met with
great.
him in Los Angeles. We had sort of lunch or breakfast or something, and I really liked him. I felt bad not doing the album. He probably would have been, I could have learned a lot from him,
But it was also, I also got to interview the cat from the Cretones and Billy Thermal, the guy from Billy Thermal who wrote that one song. It was just so cool, just going so deep. There's so much music out there.
Yeah,
and
in such a short time,
Yeah, that period.
And the thing that I never realized till later is how close we were to the beginning of, the Beatles and the 60s rock that kind of everything was born from.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like ancient history to me when it was, 1980 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it had only been around for 20 years, and now that it's, 50, 60 years or whatever, you realize, like, wow, it was all kind of early on. And I feel kind of lucky to have come up when I did before the internet and to have experienced what it was like, in the record business back then. For good or for bad, it was a more magical time, and a lot of money was put into it, by labels, and they still would sort of develop artists and stuff in a way that just is kind of unheard of now, except on a really indie level,
Yeah, definitely, man. And I can only imagine how many, that's one thing I've always wondered about you is how many anime fans came to you strictly on the fact that you used,
Well,
Cobra.
there weren't that many. When I started out, Lisa and I used to go to comic book conventions and try to find, anime and manga stuff. That it was mostly kind of underground,
Yeah.
And to me, the appeal was really the way it looked.
Totally.
But also, I liked a lot of the stories. The Miyazaki movies with Nausicaa of the Wind, I really loved. And there was a series called Mai, the Psychic Girl that I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And, Akira.
Yeah, Akira.
The boy with the crazy powers that destroys everything.
Yep.
And I loved all that stuff, but it was really not mainstream here at all yet. And it was amazing to watch over kind of the 10, 15 years after Girlfriend, the look of anime became used a lot in Western culture.
Forget it.
It became much better known.
Oh,
and,
totally.
It was, again, me getting a hobby of mine into my work when we made the Girlfriend video and the I've Been Waiting video. We were able to use, that anime in it was, again, very unusual, and I had to, work really hard to find it. And I was lucky enough that there was this lady named Sandy who was at a zoo.
Yeah.
And she kind of got into it with me and helped me hook up with I believe it was called Streamline Pictures, was kind of the main
that owned it?
outlet for anime and getting rights at the time.
Wow.
But it was crazy when I first went to Japan during that era because they knew I was a fan of their stuff, and they called me otaku, which is really kind of like nerd. It's like it's not really positive exactly. It's kind of more like weirdo nerd in his bedroom kind of person.
Yeah.
But they still, and I was just amazed by all the stuff that they had there. When they're into something in Japan, they really get deeply into it, and that goes for music that they like. In the world of anime and manga, they're just the amount of merchandise and stuff that I brought back with me from Japan was just like monumental. Plus, they love to give gifts.
Yeah.
So anytime I did a show there, I'd get a million cool anime characters or various products related to them.
They're a gift. They're a gift. The Japanese people are a fucking gift to this earth.
I love them. Paul Chastain from Velvet Crush. We were kind of partly involved with matchmaking. He and his Japanese wife Yatsuka, and they have 2 little kids, and they live near Osaka.
That's awesome.
And they're so adorable. And
That's awesome.
It's just wonderful because we have this connection to Japan.
Yeah, it makes me, I can't understand just all this rise and just anti-Asian hate crimes and things, because these people are nothing but wise and polite and giving, there's
I know. It's crazy. I mean, sometimes I hear about that.
Creative.
I just think, can there really be that many people that feel that way about them?
It's insane.
It's like, I don't know. I just never felt like anybody was anti-Asian. But I mean, I knew the history from World War II and the camps and all that stuff. But I just never saw anybody not liking Japanese people, kind of in my own life, until we heard about it with, the virus and stuff.
I know.
I mean, it's just...
It's crazy.
I'm very anti, that kind of discrimination.
Oh, totally.
I think we're all of one thing together.
Yeah.
And, I'm very anti-bigotry and
me
this
too,
kind
absolutely.
of white supremacy bullshit. I can't wait till everything's so mixed together that it can't exist anymore,
That's what I'm saying, man. And that's the beautiful thing. And I was always raised, and that's the thing. It's just like, and that's where it's crazy, because I wouldn't be me without the contributions of me from Asian culture and black culture. The stuff I grew up on is part of who I am.
Black culture is just incredible. And growing up in Nebraska, there were just very few black people. You know what I mean? At my high school, there were maybe 2 or 3 black guys, but one of them was a football star who went on to being really successful and became a sports guy on TV in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And
that's awesome.
But I didn't get to know a lot of black people till later on.
Yeah.
And I had a few black fans, and I was always excited, to see them whenever.
Yeah.
I like different kinds of people. And one of the things I love about the last couple years is there have been so many shows based more with black actors that are just incredible.
Absolutely.
And incredible horror movies.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
I love watching. There's so many really talented actors.
Yeah, Jordan Peele stuff.
Right now.
And absolutely.
Beautiful people,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Around here in Omaha, there's a lot of people from Africa. These just beautiful, very dark-skinned guys. I'll just see them, and I'm just like, what a beautiful creature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just such cool people, and I hope we all just continue to merge.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I know it. That's a really cool thing. I remember I worked for a book publisher for a while, and I was doing a book about Africa, people that came over from, from the Sudan, and a lot of Sudanese and a lot of African immigrants wind up coming, settling in the Midwest, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
Because they, it's just amazing. I more and more, I don't know, maybe it's because of the global warming. It's just weird, because I'm from New York. I live in New Jersey. This is as far kind of south I go is North Jersey, 15 minutes from the New York border, It's,
Sure.
But I think of, just how much and people just always talk about they don't want the borders, they want to close the borders. There's so much wide open space in terms of fields and stuff in the Midwest. I mean, and people can settle, they can create, they can settle and grow food, and right? I mean, it's such a sustainable part of the country. Wouldn't you agree?
I just think it's just going to merge more and more. I mean,
I hope
love
man.
Hispanic people. Like, I got to know them
quite a bit
living in California for 20 years.
Yes.
And it's like I miss them.
Yeah.
Like, I love them,
Oh, it's wonderful,
and so
man.
It breaks my heart, the shit they had to go through, just because this fucking asshole leading all the other assholes,
And that's
it's
another thing, yeah.
Terrible, but I just don't think it can last. I just think it's a melting pot. That's what we are. It's what it's always been.
Yeah.
That's what our country's about,
That's right, man. And it's great. And I always hated how much they, especially Mexico and Mexican folks. There's such a nobility to Mexican culture that I think I really think it's overlooked. There's such a noble. There's such a just something the way even the music and the art. It's always so dressed up and
the music.
Yes.
The family.
Yes.
The family unit.
Yes.
Is so strong.
Totally.
There,
It's.
And I love it. And
that's it.
The thing is, every culture has these great things about
it.
Right.
Everybody
does.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why it's just nonsense to try to portray them as the other or whatever.
It's ridiculous.
We all belong together,
Yeah, well, and that's one thing where I'm very grateful. I grew up in a household where, when I was very little, Italian was spoke all the time,
That's amazing.
Because it was all just very, I still have my Uncle Benny, my cousin Benny, who just, passed away a while back, but he never spoke English. The guy never sold out to English language. He would always.
How fluent are you?
I'm not very fluent, but I learned Spanish a lot better in school, I think, from that, because Spanish and Italian, I could learn. They're kind of, there's a lot of bit of a crossover between Italian and Spanish, so I was able to learn. You know what I mean? And Spanish, I did excellent.
Yeah.
And I love it. My son loves learning Spanish. And it's awesome. I'm grateful. I love it. I love speaking Spanish. I think Spanish language is wonderful. It's
it's great. I love it too.
And that's the thing. It's crazy. And the other thing is how much pop music transcends race and culture. To hear some pop groups happen to be Spanish sing like the Beatles or things of that nature. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really cool.
There's also a lot of great ancient stuff, stuff from the 60s from other countries where they had their own groovy bands and
K-pop
cool stuff,
Yeah, I'm excited to see what those, if any of those BTS guys go solo. I'm excited to see if one of them is a Harry Styles in the mix or like a Justin Timberlake that breaks out and does some real next level stuff. That's what I'm waiting for. That's what I love. I mean, that's what I love. Even going back and listening to, and I don't know if you feel the same way. I really liked some of those NSYNC songs. They're great. Girlfriend?
Yeah, and
Girlfriend's so
of course,
good.
There's the classic Backstreet Boys song and
Show Me That. Well, yeah.
Britney, all that stuff.
Yeah, right? I mean, Max Martin had something. Isn't that? No, that wasn't Max Martin. It was, who was the guy that wrote those songs? Was it Max Martin?
That sounds right.
But he had some good songs. Even we lost Jim Steinman. I mean, I'm going back and listening to Total Eclipse of the Heart is so good.
Yeah, I hear that quite a lot getting used in shows, movies.
Yeah, I mean, now I know why you like, are you and Susanna planning on doing another covers album? Because now I know why you do it. It's so much fun.
We are planning to do a 90s next.
That'll be fun.
We're starting to get together, ideas for it. I'm not sure how fast it'll happen, but yes, we are. She kind of has a lot of projects going, so it'll have a lot to do with when she probably has time. But we've been on the phone more than once this year and talking about getting one going, so that's definitely going to happen at some point.
Can I put in a request?
Yes.
Hadaway's "What Is Love"? Do it.
"What Is Love" by
Hadaway. Remember "What Is Love"? Baby, don't hurt me no more.
Yeah, is it 90s?
That's 97. I remember I've been watching that one skit on Saturday Night Live, the Roxbury with Jim Carrey and Chris Kattan and Will Ferrell as the Guidos.
Oh, I love that movie.
That song. That would be great. You should do at least one of those and at least one freestyle song. At least one Cover Girls or something like that, like a freestyle, like a R&B freestyle song would be awesome, man. That would be so cool.
That's a good idea.
I talked to Susanna Hoffs. I interviewed her about Prince. I did a whole thing about Prince, and I got so tongue-tied talking to her. I probably would feel that way about Winona Ryder, too. I was like, blah, blah, blah. I think I told her...
Susanna's so
She
nice.
is cool. She was so
very
cool.
Nice and easygoing.
She was so cool. But remember, I'm like, she's Susanna Hoffs, and I'm,
And you were such the right age.
And I was so crushed out, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it was like, duh, but she was so cool, and it was amazing. And that's where it was like, and that's where I got the put two and two together about Prince, and talking to all those women, because I talked to a bunch of women that worked with Prince about Prince, and he really is. He really he wasn't a pig. He loved just the company of women. He loved just the creative energy of being in their company, right? I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. But hey, dude, it was so good talking to you, man. You gave me so much time. I really appreciate it, man.
It's my pleasure, and it's fun to walk down memory lane a little bit. And
yeah, I appreciate it.
You have such a wide range of stuff you like and understand. That's really cool. It's
that's
better than I have, but it inspires me to open up and know more music.
Hey, when I decided I wanted to do this, write about music, because I used to read those, I used to read all those papers. I used to get, I went from I'm a big wrestling fan, so I probably 10 or 11, I used to just eat up all those Bill Apter magazines, like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all that stuff. And then it would transfer to music. So I always knew I wanted to write for magazines and do things like that, but then it went to music, and then I just ate up music. And I grew up in a music family. My mom was a Beatle freak. She was at Shea. She was at JFK. She made my grandfather take her everywhere. And my uncle used to be a manager at Record World. Remember Record World on Long Island?
Sure.
And he used to be the manager at the one in the Mid-Island Plaza in Hicksville. And he introduced me to so much stuff, and then just reading and reading and watching videos, and Kurt Loder as Kurt Loder was such a big, which is weird because he's like a libertarian now, and I'm still, because he's not exactly a Trumpy. Same with Kennedy, they're a weird kind of Republican, like this MTV Republican kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. I saw Kurt a lot, in the old days.
But he's a hero of mine.
On TV, and I don't remember politics ever entering into it then.
No.
So, I haven't really followed where people are at with that.
But
oh yeah, I knew all those DJs and.
Oh yeah, and
it's crazy. We thought MTV would, rule the world forever or something.
I know, and it's a shame because they really did overlook our generation. I feel like Paramount is picking it up. They did the original Real World thing and things like that, but I feel like they probably have so much tape they can just do a data dump on Tubi or something and just run old episodes, old 3-hour blocks of from '85. I wonder if they even recorded those. If you have like a 4-hour block of like Mark Goodman.
Someone has them somewhere.
You know, I want to watch like Chillin' with the Wees, man. I want to watch like Kevin Seal. Remember all that? You know, I love all that. I love all that stuff, and I love like that the '90s is coming back, like the early '90s, because I was kind of on my own stuff, but now it's funny, like the more kitschy aspects of it, and how much people love like Empire Records. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And Rex Manning Day is a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always loved those teen movies. I liked the ones that I'm forgetting his name. He passed away.
John
Hughes.
Made
all the Pretty Pink
Oh yeah,
movies.
John Hughes. Yeah.
Yeah, Hughes. And I got to be involved. You know, probably my best experience was Can't Hardly Wait. I got to know the cast a little bit. They came to my house for a party once.
Yep.
I was friends with Seth Green.
Yeah.
And, they were like such kind of nice kids that were all sort of starting out. And
yeah, man.
I did some music for that movie.
That's a great movie.
I got to stick my toe in the teen movie realm.
Yeah,
as
totally,
well.
man.
I was really lucky to kind of get to know a lot of things that I loved. Ren and Stimpy. I would go up to Spumco, and they would, John Kay and his partner would act out the scripts for me while I, sat on the floor and smoked pot. And we still have a message that Billy West made.
What? Billy West.
Matthew and Lisa aren't home, but at the sound of the magic nose goblins, leave a message.
Oh my God.
And we still have it on, and people laugh, but I don't even think they know what it is.
Wow. It's so funny.
We kept that one forever.
You say Billy West, though, and I immediately think of like Jackie Puppet from Howard Stern. He did, he was on Howard Stern for a long time, so they made a puppet of Jackie Martling. And he would do like the Jackie voice. It's the funniest thing. It's just, oh my God, it's hilarious, man.
Sure.
That's crazy, man. That's some wild stuff. But it was so good talking to you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Same here. And I really appreciate the interest.
Yeah, totally.
Faith, and at some point, I'm sure I'll see you out there.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope you come out. Even if hey, why not? Hey, eventually maybe you end up doing like living room parties, house parties, outdoor. Like you play like like the local lake house or something, right?
It could happen.
That'd be awesome. All right, my friend. Hey, it was good talking to you, man. Have a good, be safe, and have a good. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right, take care, sir. Take care. Bye.
Yep.